Hello, everybody. This is Letitia, and I'm here with Josh. And we're going to spend the next probably about an hour going through the release notes of the upcoming release. I am putting it in chat how you can access the release notes if you haven't already. And we'll sort of keep referencing them throughout and walk through them in that order. And we'll show you a little bit of stuff in the actual beta account as well. If you haven't noticed or haven't read the downtime message, you should have that in your splash message. And that's going to be at the end of the month. So September 30th, we're going to have our downtime. And then when we come back, this is when you're going to be able to see these changes and use the new features that are coming out. If anyone has any questions as we go through, we do have a large group today, so everybody is going to stay muted, except Josh and I. But you can use the chat field on the GoToWebinar, and you can type in your question. We'll review some of them. If some don't apply to all, we might just chat you back on there as well. So if you do have questions, go ahead and type them in so that we can get those addressed as we go along. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And so again, we're just kind of looking at the release notes here. And the first section of the release notes is about some changes coming to ISP data. And I'm going to show you these changes in the beta account. And any of you guys can access this and test and play around with your data as well. If you go to beta.therapservices.net, you can log into that account and be able to see what your account would look like after this release. And so with the ISP data, what's changing is going to be with the midnight hour. So when I go to ISP data new, and we'll go find somebody here. Get all the way in. There we go. With your begin and end time, right now, if you were to do midnight to midnight, which the system would let you do that right now, all of your reports, all of your billing, that's going to think that this is zero time, okay? And everything will be calculated as zero. After the release, this will be counted for 24 hours, okay? So this is definitely not how you should be doing an absence. Definitely understand that midnight to midnight will represent an entire day and will be on your reports as 24 hours. If you're doing ISP data billing, it's going to come over as 24 hours there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this so that in a minute we can take a look at the report. And I'm just going to go back in. I'm going to enter some more data for this. Okay, because the other thing that's changing is also with that midnight hour, but that's if you're not doing the whole day, but a partial day. So for example, if maybe I started with the individual at 7 p.m. And I worked, and maybe it went overnight, but the next day I'll put on the next entry. But if I was with them all the way through midnight, I can do this. If anybody's trying to do this in our system today, you would know you would get an error, and the latest time you can do is 11:59 p.m. Okay, but after the release, you'll be able to do any start time, and then the end time can end at midnight. Okay, that way you are capturing every last minute. You're not going to lose any billing and lose that last minute there. Okay, so let me go ahead. We'll submit that too. Not really paying much attention to the other details there, just focusing on the time change. Oh, I lied. Oh, because I already did that. I already did this guy that same goal. Let me go to something else. I'll just go to a different day. So that error message was because we already documented the entire day for the 19th, so we're not going to double bill for him. So let's try that again for yesterday's date. So we'll do 7 p.m. till midnight. And really, I mean, I'm just making up the 7 p.m., but again, any time there is your entry time, and you'll be able to end it at midnight, okay? And this should work just fine that time. Much better, okay? So now, if I go over, and you're going to notice the screens when I go to ISP data report look a little different, and I'll come back and touch on that in just a minute. But if we go run a report for David here, and I'm going to go run a clinician report. Again, these screens probably look a little new too, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay, you'll notice that, in addition to it letting me do that, you'll see that, we're now calculating every last minute to that midnight hour and not having to end at that 11:59. So that 7 to midnight is counting towards 5 hours, complete 5 hours. And the midnight to midnight, again, is going to be that 24 hours. Um, anybody that was doing this before, your report, I mean, if you are doing this now, if you go look at your clinician report, that's going to say 0. But, starting after the release, so September 30th, October 1st, this is going to be 24 hours, whether that's, in one of your ISP data reports, like the clinician, or one of your HAB checklists. It's also going to carry it over to billing that way as well. Um, as far as overlapping, I got the overlap error because I was trying to put both entries on the 19th, and those did in fact overlap. But you won't overlap if now on the 20th I need to start again at midnight at 12 a.m. Since that's a new day, that would not cause an overlap. Okay. I see a bunch of questions coming in, so I'm going to just pause for a second. Anything that I should read on here, Josh? Questions we want to go over?
Just answered them all. The biggest
Okay.
question we've received is, can you go across days? So can you
No.
go,
Right.
7 p.m.
No.
to 8 a.m.?
And I think a lot of that has to do with billing, because you're billing for a particular day. So you kind of have to, have what hours are going for the 19th versus the 20th and so on. So I think that ties a lot back to billing. But no, you don't go overnight. You would go, if you did have an overnight shift, if your shift was, 7 p.m. till 3 a.m., you would need to do the 7 to midnight and then the midnight to 3 on the second day. So not changing that. But again, really big for certain states that they're going to capture that last minute and not lose any billing. Um, Okay. Also with that, and you'll see this part in the release notes, don't really have a way to show it to you on September 19th, but we are also going to be addressing daylight savings with the times in respect to that. So when we lose an hour and when we gain an hour, we're going to factor that in to your duration here as needed. You also, for example, when you lose an hour, you wouldn't be able to document only that hour. So on the night that we lose an hour, you could not come in and say, oh, I was with the individual from, say, 2:05 to 2:45, because that time didn't even exist that night, and they would get an error message. You can start earlier and end later, so I could certainly put in 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., and it would just subtract that 1 hour. But it's, again, not going to let you do times that didn't exist. And then same thing when we gain an hour, if you put in the times that include that hour, it's going to add an extra hour in there for you. So it's going to factor in daylight savings time. For those states and areas that don't do daylight savings times, that's not going to affect you. It's not going to do anything with your math there. Well, as long as you pick the right time zone. It's based on the individual's time zone. So, the system will know not to factor that in there. Anything else on the ISP data? Enter the ISP program, still click the option to overlap. So you can still stop overlappage if you do not want to overlap for a certain ISP program that you're billing for, and you don't want any overlappage. You still can restrict that. I'm just saying that when you end at midnight, you still can start at midnight the next day. It's not going to take that as an overlap because it's 2 different days. Okay. All right, so let me go back up. I think you already saw a little preview of this. But those ISP data reports are changing to the new user interface. Very, very little is changing with the actual report. It's just that it's going to have this new look and feel once I get in there. Okay, this is really the only change. Right now, it's sort of at the top of the screen where it defaults to approved, and you can select to say approved, discontinued, or all. And so that's here, and I could do both if I wanted, or just keep it at that approved if that's what I want to run a report on. Okay, and then it is, I want this goal, we'll say next. And, and for everybody doing ISP data reports, you can tell right away this looks different. So this is the new user interface, certainly going to look much better on as you switch to different devices and whatnot. So that's really all that's changed. All the same questions are here for each report. It might have changed whether it was a drop down or a radio box, but all the same fields. Okay, so no functionality change there, really just that new user interface. Okay, let's hop back. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything with ISP data here. Talked about that, our reports. Okay, so SCOM. SCOM changed a little while back to the new user interface. And with SCOM and the new user interface, we didn't have for a while there that option to select all users and to be able to do an agency-wide SCOM. We now are going to have that back. So for especially agencies over the 100, where you can change that to see so many people at a time, you'll be able to do everybody at once. So you're going to have a link there when you go in to select recipients, and you can go ahead and select all. So wonderful there. You're excited about that if you know what I'm talking about. The next thing with SCOM, and this you may or may not have noticed this, SCOM is very dependent on your user privileges. So if you used to have access to an individual, so if you used to have access to Mary and you received an SCOM on her and were able to open it, and then all of a sudden, Mary was removed from your caseload, that SCOM, you would get an error message, the insufficient privileges. You weren't able to do anything with it. You couldn't trash it. You couldn't open it. You couldn't touch it because you didn't have access to Mary anymore. It's still going to be that you won't be able to open it, if your access was removed. Certainly, if you do need it and your super admin adds that access back, you'll be able to see it. But if you lose access to an individual, what we're changing is that you'll be able to trash it. So if it's kind of sitting there in your inbox, and you want to be able to clear things, you will be able to move that to your trash folder. Okay. And then the last thing, I think this is the last thing for SCOM that's changing, and this is just for certain accounts, so our oversight and case management providers. Case managers, when they're viewing a GER, are now going to have buttons at the bottom to be able to send an SCOM or send a multi-provider SCOM. So they'll be able to send that to any of the linked accounts or the oversight account. As Josh reminds me, the biggest thing to remember here is that if they don't have access to the GER, so maybe I was sending it to one of the linked providers, if they didn't have access to that GER, again, they won't be able to open that form. But if you are sending it to, say, the oversight, they have access, certainly they'll be able to open your SCOM, open that GER form as well. Okay. Some other changes with GERs, and this is actually GERs and BERs, behavior events. We're adding an option for therapeutic options. So that's one of the things that's on your admin tab, if we look at that real quick. Here it is, the restraint list. You guys have the option in your account to say which restraint list you want to use. This new one that's getting added is on page 2, and I could switch if that's what your agency uses, are those therapeutic options. You could go ahead and switch to that one, and those would be the drop downs that you would see when you do a GER related to behavior. Okay. Other things, these ones are pretty state specific. For California, we added in an event type called evacuation, and then certain subtypes that go along with an evacuation. In Connecticut, if you're going to get an error message, if you basically have a required field blank on the 255, it's going to warn you of that. If you go ahead and try to save, submit, approve, it's going to make you fill out that blank field before you can continue. Illinois, we added a new event type there for other, for GER, or not GER, G-tube, J-tube catheter issues, and also one for wrong diet or wrong consistency. So a couple new types were added for that state. And then Rhode Island, under mistreatment, we added, I guess we added mistreatment, and we also added the CFR 42 under confidentiality violation. Again, if you're in these specific states, you probably know exactly what these options are. And South Dakota, we added a new notification type for DDD. Okay, so those are the GER state changes that you'll see depending on where you're at. Shifting gears a little bit, care plans. So if anyone's using the individual care plans, you'll know that when you do a new one or update one, everybody gets alerted on their to-do tab for acknowledging that. That number, like many other to-do tab numbers, stays on there for 30 days. So what's changing here is we're basically giving you a way to read the other ones very easily, or even let's say you're a new staff and you need to sort of go through everything. When you go to your care plan section, there's a link to click acknowledge, and that's going to show you everything, which I guess I don't have anything, but it will show you everything that you have in acknowledge for care plans, and you'll be able to go through and acknowledge those. Okay. Notifications, nothing is changing with notifications. Well, minus one thing I'll tell you in a second. But, you know, as far as how they work, nothing is changing. It's just changing to the new user interface. So, I mean, you guys are probably getting used to this as we switch all the screens into that. The one thing that is changing with it is, it used to say pager email, I think is what it said, but it definitely said pager. And some people just thought that meant, you know, it was only pager functionality. So since not too many people use pagers anymore, we changed that wording to phone, text message, email, because you can certainly set that up to get an SMS message. Okay. Logging in. So a couple things here. If you have multiple tabs open and you log out of one, it's gonna, you know, log you out of everywhere. And also for anybody using the two-factor authentication, right now when you use it, if you type in a wrong your one-time code, if you type in that code, it you know, basically logs you out and you got to start back with your password again. You're going to now have 3 attempts with that versus the 1. But just like if you use 3 wrong regular passwords, if you use 3 wrong two-factor authentication passwords, you'll be locked out if you have it set at 3. Depends what your password policy is. Okay. A couple of things to provider admin. I just looked at this earlier, and basically the drop down, you're just able to type in to quickly find something. So really just sort of a quick added feature there to get to the right option in a list. And then activity tracking. Once in a while it comes up, you know, that certain activities are not in activity tracking, and so trying to make that a little more consistent. You can see here what modules and what module actions have been added. So, you know, a few different modules and then a few different modules when you download the PDF. So those items are getting added to activity tracking. Okay. I think Josh has pretty much covered all the questions that have come in. Was there anything else you wanted me to touch on, Josh, from the questions?
No, I think we're good. Just
okay.
A couple suggestions. Yep.
All right. Well, I'll switch it over to you if you want to start with scheduling.
Great. All right, so here we're going to start off with our scheduling module. A couple changes to scheduling. Anybody with an oversight account will now be able to look at schedules in their link providers via their oversight account. So you will need to make sure you add that on your super role. If you guys are interested and you do have an oversight account, please feel free to write to us via your feedback button, because we do need to turn that on and that ability for you. Once we do that, you can go ahead and apply that via your super role. Just make sure you have the schedule view option. A couple extra things now with activity tracking, as Leticia was just talking about it, we do have now the template delete, update, and save are now being tracked in activity tracking. We also have a new field, reason for deletion, when you try to delete an already approved slot. So if you do have a slot there in scheduling that's already been approved, you will need to enter a reason for deletion. You will also be able to search all unassigned slots. So if you have an empty slot, which was, put in our prior release, and you do just want to search all unassigned slots, you can now just search for those, and that way you can see what has not been filled yet. We also have a new feature in scheduling, which is going to be the release schedule. So you will now be able to unlock your selection of programs, individual, or staff. So you will see this here as so. You can either unlock all or unlock individual slots. So that way, if you have multiple people working on schedules, you can come in and unlock those so other people can join you as well. We've also had a lot of complaints regarding using our feature of the grid in scheduling. So when you start off slots, it will now be in 15-minute intervals. So the closer you are to your hour or quarter hour, it'll take you that way and it'll start off there. Also, the address field will become required if you have a location entered on the slot. So if you do have that in there, you will need to fill out your entire address. We also made some changes to validations here. So if you enter certain parts of an address, then it will require you to enter other things. So for example, if you enter your address, city, and zip, you will need to enter address, city, and zip if you select the country. If you select the country, then you will need to add the state if it is USA or Canada, etc. Slight changes to our individual support plan if you guys are using that, or our new ISP, as some of you Therap folks are familiar with. Major thing is we're adding time zone. So you can see what time zone the person that was working on the document went ahead and did any of that stuff, whether they approved it, submitted it. So that's going to come out on the individual support plan. It'll be on the PDF, the acknowledgement page, any archives on the discontinuations, signature page, sorry, change forms, and the PDF of the change form. Also, when you do have an archived ISP plan, it will display linked ISP program information under the action plan section. So you'll see it in the discussion records, and you'll have a new column there that says related to action plan. You'll also have change form acknowledgement information on the archived form of the ISP plan, so you'll see any acknowledgements there as well. You're also going to see a new field. If an ISP plan was archived, you'll see who was returned by, so that'll be included in the information as well, along with the timestamp. We also added ISP status and activated by to the top of the PDF of the change form as well. So you have the status, whether it's approved or discontinued, and then who activated it. We're also adding time zones to our personal focus worksheet. Also, in the team members section, if you already had added someone from one of your list of contacts in the dropdown and you try to select that name, it'll tell you that a team member has been selected from the dropdown menu. So the other field should not be empty. So it's either one or the other. ISP agenda, same thing. We've also added time zones to the ISP agendas. We've also changed some parts of the archived ISP agendas as well. So now the top of the archived ISP agenda will show individual instead of individual name. And then you also have required items instead of regulatory items will be the new field there. Also with our individual homepage, if you are part of an oversight and case management provider, then you will now be able to see who the assigned case manager is from the case management agency within the individual homepage. If you click on your section there, and I can go ahead and show that. So if I jump into my individual homepage here, and I go ahead and jump into my case status, you will see who the case status is. And actually, I don't have anybody for that one, sorry. I think I may be in the wrong account, sorry. Yep, sorry, my individual homepage is not working. Sorry. But you will see the case manager section in there. Our DDO section, if anybody's using business intelligence, we do now, we did increase the character limit of our outcome measure types. So it's now 20 characters. So if you have a long outcome measure type there, you can now add that and increase to 20 characters. Also for oversight persons here, we do now have the ability to discontinue referrals. So if you send out a referral to a linked provider, you can now search for all referrals and discontinue them directly from this page. So you will have a discontinue button under the action section all the way to the right. Any folks using our SIS, we did add the form ID to the search page, so you can now search by form ID. And we also added that there onto the form. For our New York folks here, we did make a change to the HAP checklist there. So you will have the time zone added there. And then also for the supplemental group day HAP folks that did not have the attendance data available, you will now have the option to include any attendance data in your checklist report. Any folks using our mobile apps? First of all, if you do have two-factor authentication and you have not configured your two-factor authentication via the web, it will let you know that you do need to configure this via the browser before you can use the mobile app. You will also have to enter your one-time password there, as you can see. And just like our web version, we did introduce, you have 3 times to get your one-time password correct. If you do not get it right in those 3 times, you'll be logged out and you'll have to log in and try again. On the mobile app for scheduling, here's an interesting thing here. So if you move over 100 meters away from the location, once you clicked check in or check out, you will go ahead and get a notification that's going to ask you to reset your location. So for any folks using our scheduling module, you'll want to take note of that and make sure that you're not moving around when you're checking in or out. Couple billing things here for you. The billable option has been added as an output column when you're running your attendance summary. So you'll see whether that was a yes or no. You also have a clear entered value section on your attendance grid. So you'll see that button there, and I'm sure a lot of folks will like that as we have a lot of attendance users. So if you are entering data, you can clear the entered values there and it'll remove your times. Just a couple things added for claims. For Medicaid, we did add code 41 for ambulance there and in the place of service section. For anybody using our PDFs billing invoices, we did add prior authorization number onto that as well. On our utilization report, if you select monthly, then the service month will appear there and it's just going to be a month now. It's not going to have the option of choosing your begin date, end date anymore. It's just going to give you the option to choose your month. For any folks that are using our service authorization Excel upload, you will now have the ability to select your authorized units per period. If you guys are used to setting those up and getting those monthly utilization reports, you will now be able to do this from within the Excel upload. Also for unit rate history, we did add the ability to search for either professional or institutional rate histories. And you'll see that under the description section code in your admin tab. We've also added a rate history search besides the service authorization section as well, so you can also search via that way as well. We've also added billing data update in activity tracking, so you can come in here and view that as well. Couple of state stuff here. We did have some things for the folks in Pennsylvania. We did add CPS on the service description code forms. So if any of you folks are interested or looking into that, feel free to reach out to your billing specialist there in Pennsylvania. We also did add a role to support this addition as well. And you'll see that in your module roles under user privileges. If you do have that role enabled, you will also be able to see your CPS under attendance there. And like I said, if you have any questions regarding any of this and you are in Pennsylvania, feel free to reach out to your billing specialist for more information. And that just about wraps up our release notes. Does anybody have any questions? Leticia, did we have anything we need to go over?
No, just I mean, I clarified that we were talking about that we transitioned from mobile apps to billing. All that stuff there at the end is all the billing related changes in the application. But no, questions have been pretty quiet. So, anybody else have any last minute questions on changes upcoming?
In the meantime, while folks ask questions, just as a reminder, you'll always see a splash message when you log in, letting you know when we will be downtime, when we have anything. You'll also have a link to your release notes within your splash message. If you're ever interested in viewing any current ones or any past ones, feel free to go to therapservices.net, our homepage. On our homepage, we will always have upcoming release notes in there as well. You'll see those on the right there. So here it's giving me the 2018.2.1 coming soon. You'll have our downtime notice. You'll have any business intelligence updates as well. So if I click on any one of those, it'll take me right to our release notes. Also on our homepage, if you do go to our help and support site, which is up here by your login button, you can always come in and see all prior release notes. You'll see these here, anything that's current, or you can type in the search release notes, and then you'll see our landing page for release notes. Here you'll be able to see historical release notes and anything there. So they are separated by year. So we'll add these every time we do have a new release. If you guys have any further questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us. You can also reach out to us via your feedback button, and one of us will be more than happy to get back to you. If any agencies are interested in two-factor authentication as well, feel free to reach out to us via your feedback button, and we'll be more than happy to provide this to you. It is a free option.
Okay, questions are pretty quiet. All
All right, awesome. We're
right, well,
gonna make
thanks,
sure we
guys.
have these things for every release. So feel free to look out for these. They will be on your login page ads there.
Well, all right, well, thanks, everybody.